The following programming is sponsored by Pete Trabucco. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or Beasley Media Group.
And welcome to another edition of Live on Tape with Pete Trabucco on WWDB AM 860 Talk Radio, a Beasley Media Group radio station. We're here in the city of brotherly love on a beautiful Saturday. Oh my goodness, what a great day we're having here. It's only like the second day of summer at this point, so it's just an amazing day. And do we have an incredible guest with us today? With me, of course, is my producer, Josh Applebaum. We really appreciate having Josh. He's done a fantastic job, but we're kind of pressed on time here. So what I want to do is I want to get to my guest really quick. This gentleman needs no introduction. He has been a radio broadcaster, disc jockey. He's done so much for the industry. You name a market, he's been in it. Syndicated radio shows, he's done television, he's done entertainment. He's just an amazing guy and my mentor, believe it or not. I've actually was on his show 15 years ago in a syndicated show that he had in New York City, and just an amazing guy. So Joey Reynolds. Joey, how are you today, Joey?
I'm good. I'm in Florida. I'm having a recovery. I had some brain surgery. I fell on my head, and my left brain is now talking to my right brain, and that's why I'm on WWDB, because we can actually have brain-to-brain conversation now again.
Absolutely, and listen. If I always known you, okay, and I've known you for many years. I've read your books, fantastic books, by the way. We'll talk about that as well. You have a hard head, and that's the only reason why you're talking to me today, is because you have a really hard head, and nothing is going to take you out. Okay. You might have had surgery because of it, and thank you so much that you're feeling so much better. We all heard about it. We were all very sad when it happened, but it looks like you're doing really well, and we really do appreciate you being on the air. But like I said, you have a hard head, so I mean, falling is not going to hurt you. Okay, they probably have to shoot you a few times, in order to get you down. But Joey, amazing. Okay. Let's talk about your career. I mean, you've been with the greats. In fact, you are one of the greats. Starting way back when in Buffalo at WKBW, I believe it was in Buffalo, and then of course NBC, WOR. In Philadelphia, you were on FIL, as well as I think also WIBG. So you got some Philadelphia background. You had the syndicated shows. And then you had the night show, which I was on, which was really cool when you had a whole bunch of us come in there and ask a lot of questions. Tell me, how did you get involved with radio? I mean, we're going back many, many decades, but what was the thing that you really loved about radio that you got into it quickly?
Well, when we were raised in a poor neighborhood, and we didn't know we were poor. But I joined the Boys Club of Buffalo, which was in those days, everything was always free. You didn't pay. We didn't pay for membership. The YMCA was free. Everything was free back then. So you have to put it in frame. The only place that a kid could go was to go to school, and then afterwards sit at home, do the homework. And we had other activities we wanted to do. So I joined the Boys Club. And we had a dance every Friday. And on the third floor of the Boys Club was a PA system. And we gave it call letters. And we started a radio station, and I was on the beginning of that. And the Boys Club on Friday allowed the Girls Club to come over so we could have the dance. So since I was fat and the girls weren't looking at me as an athletic figure, I became a disc jockey. And I figured, okay, this is one way in. And I went on the air there, and we played the records. And of course, the music was the thing back then. If you were in control of the songs were the romance. Now the station we're on right now, I don't know if they still have the FM, but WWDB was Dolly Banks, and Billy Banks is the wife, I think, and that's what the call letters are. So I don't know where this is. This probably has been changed. What were the call letters of this station? Just for the curiosity here.
I believe it's been WWDB for the last, 15 or 20 years. Beasley Media bought the whole network. There's like 6 stations here: talk station, a sports station, country station. They're all on the top of the charts, and we're kind of like the the poor sister or poor brother because we're the AM station.
Oh,
And
well,
like,
you're part of Beasley.
yeah, Beatty. Before that was great. Before that was Grady Media that owned a network. I think it's the third or fourth largest, I guess, network of radio stations. And this is the AM portion of the radio station. But yeah, you worked Philly for the longest time.
Well, I was in and out of Philly because my manager was Tony Mammarella, and he was the producer of American Bandstand. He lived in Philly. In 1938, his father inoculated half of the city with the smallpox. He was a doctor, of course, and he was legendary. Tony was a Catholic guy who had 8 kids, and he produced American Bandstand. And when Bob Horn was caught with sexuality in the park with one of the dancers, it made the front page of the Philadelphia Inquirer. And the Philly Inquirer was owned by Walter Annenberg, who also owned WFIL. Now, the show was not networked to begin with. I mean, even when Jerry Blavat was on the station on dancing, it was a local show. Then it became a network show. And when Bob Horn got in trouble, Tony went into the announce booth at Channel 6, and he saw this handsome young guy who seemed clean cut and would not have the same issues. And his name was Dick Clark. So he brought Dick Clark into the studio, and the show went national. And it became, as you well know, something for all of us who are my age after school to watch on television. And there was another guy named Johnny Carson, incidentally, who had a show called Who Do You Trust? That was a half-hour show before American Bandstand. So it was a good time. It was a discovery time. Point that I'm making here is that I was in Philly because it's Tony's hometown. Okay. And Tony, of course, ended his career by buying the Beatles record and putting out She Loves You on Swan Records, which was on 8th and Fitzwater. So he was a great mentor. And also, he took the rap for payola that Dick Clark was accused of before Congress and the Congressional Record because they were putting their names on songs they did not write and taking credit for things they did not do, and they got in trouble. But Tony took the rap. He quit the station. He quit Annenberg, and he went to Swan Records, went to London, and his wife insisted that he buy She Loves You, which was a master they were bidding on because nobody here wanted to have it. I mean, Capitol Records did not want to release it. Matter of fact, the Beatles were initially on VJ and Swan. Only one song. She Loves You was one song on Swan. Okay. Flip side was an instrumental, and the album was She Loves You with all instrumental on it. So it's quite a history. Philadelphia's always had quite a. I mean, I like Philly because I like people, and Philly is the neighborhood type city that New York wants to be, but will never be. It can't be because it's not set up that way. People don't raise their families in Philly in a respectable fashion. And in New York, we like to shoot them. So it's different.
Well, that is true. I tell you, it's funny. When I met you, you were a talk show person, but you started out top 40. You were personalities, 60s and 70s. You're amassing large audiences in Connecticut, Cleveland, Detroit, Michigan, Buffalo, Philadelphia, New York. And then later on, you changed format and you became the first, and I mean the first, shock talk radio person, even before like Howard Stern. And by the way, I know you worked alongside Howard Stern for a little bit as well.
No, I replaced Howard at NBC. But let me tell you what happened. See, Don Imus was, his talk was political. He was always on the politics. I was always on the management and authority. I always challenged authority. That began in my house and in school. I always had that issue. Howard was all about sex. So each of us had some certain something that if you put it all together, it's the country. It's America, It's politics, sex, and home. There's nothing more except money. Now, we didn't have money was not the goal in those times. Everybody had to make a living and work after World War II, and we all were we were building a country. We were building a lot of fun. Yeah, and we were building a lot of families. and we had a different society. It's just changed. That's all. We've evolved in many ways, and we also screwed up and never went back to some of the things that really worked for us. That's the philosophy. But I did not become the old philosopher. I got on the air, and I was a young guy. I was a kid, and everybody who listened to me was a kid, and we all talked the same language. The parents didn't like rock and roll, and I was from a city where it actually began, because if you want to hear the history of it a little bit,
Sure.
I don't know what you want to hear, but I'm going to tell you. The first disc jockey was not Alan Freed. That he gets credit for coining the phrase rock and roll. He was in Akron, Ohio, and Cleveland. But the first one was actually, Alan was the Moon Dog, and George Lorenz in Buffalo was the Hound Dog. And they both sounded black, but they were playing black music, and it was very popular. And everybody thought, okay, these are real cool guys, but they were two older white guys. And that was a surprise. They stayed off of television. But when we all moved in to play music in a organized fashion, these guys kind of faded because they were on the take with payola. They were being paid to play certain music, and even Alan Freed died an alcoholic. I mean, this is the sad side.
Yeah,
but the great side is that they created an industry. And we all rode on their great beginning. Everything has a sweet side. I think Julia Childs used to say it when she was on public television years ago. Used to say, "There's a public side and there's a private side. The private side is the side that you don't show when you're making crepes or pancakes. It has holes in it. But the public side is gleaming and delicious." So, we had a private side, we had a public side, like everything else. Politics has that too now, and everybody has that. So it's the way we are. And I always I was more interested in the audience than I was in management. I don't really care about management. I never had a high regard for authority. Okay. And that's probably where it came from, frankly, if I want to do a little bit of my pathology. But, I'm sober 42 years. That's why I've lived this long, probably. I did yoga for 28 years, the Bikram yoga in a hot room. Okay. And I kept myself healthy. I think that was part of it. Then you have to live with whatever you were dealt by your family, the genetics. And I just had this idea that I liked people and I wanted to reach people. I didn't care about reaching management. So I had about 40 jobs, and I didn't always get fired. I quit a lot of them. I just didn't like what was going on. Yeah. I don't like this conglomerate stuff that you're talking about right now, but I don't have a vote on it. It doesn't matter. They're doing it anyway. The iHeartRadio and the Beasley and all these other guys, they're fine. I mean, they're making money. But I wasn't about the money. I was about the audience. And I'm still about the audience. That's why you don't find me on the air. I don't want to sit there and argue about politics. I get bored. I'm bored with these guys.
Sure.
We've had 3 years of who's right and who's wrong. If I did that in my family, they would never talk to me again. I mean, if I had to choose the one that I love, I have 2 daughters, 5 grandchildren. I don't choose any of them. Yeah. First of all, they're all given. And the other thing is that I love them all, and not the same. I don't love them all the same. It depends on the day and what they're doing. But I'm a family guy, and I'm not. And I think this is a family country, and I don't want to get into that whole thing where you sit there and talk about the 2 people that are running, or they're not even running. First of all, one of them is not even nominated to run, and we're still talking about it. I don't want to hear about it.
Well, this show basically is more, it's not political at all. Believe me. I wanted you on the air because you have one heck of a background. You were there during the golden age of radio. Basically, you started the whole shock jock stuff. And the thing that people
true,
like.
But wait a minute. The shock jock is a slogan. I really just talked to the kids because I was one of them. And I just brought the street to the radio. Even Jerry Blavat used to say that. He said, "Boy, you brought the street to the radio." And I said, "Yeah, because they put me in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I don't play any instruments. I don't know. I know jack about instruments. I don't know anything. I don't play anything. Although I was best of friends with Les Paul, he invented the guitar, and he said the only instrument you play is your mouth." And I said, "That's true. I don't know anything about music, but I'm in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame." And yet they deny me in the Radio Hall of Fame, where I've had more fame than most everybody who's in there.
This is true. This is true. Well, one of these days, I'm sure that'll change as well.
No, it doesn't matter. It's become a running gag because, life is so fun for me. I have such a good time. I don't really judge people based on their income and based on on anything, their color, their size. I don't care about any of that. I never did. I never would have played a record because we came in all sizes, all colors, and all nationalities and everything. Oh my God. We had so many records that we played, which if I used my judgment, I would have played 2 records a week,
Sure. Well, now that you brought that up, we got to bring up the incident with the Jersey Boys. Okay. The show, the Jersey Boys.
Well, that wasn't that. Yeah, I'll tell you that. I went from Buffalo. I got fired. I did get fired in Buffalo, and I nailed my shoes to the door. And I had a big argument with management because, first of all, I was on radio and TV. And they had a telethon. And when the telethon was on, I had revealed on the air to my audience on the radio side, that the telethon was on. And I had Frank Gorshin, who was at that time on Batman. He was a character on Batman, which was a popular TV series back in those days.
Yeah, I think he was the Riddler. He was the Riddler.
And Forrest Tucker had F Troop. So both of these guys, I don't think the public realized that we paid people to do telethons, that they all thought it was charity. So I was very annoyed that people would take their bowling money and donate it to the Variety Club at the time and give this money to a children's organization. Yet these other guys were getting a lot of money. So I said something on the air. I said, Frank Gorshin is getting $10,000 and Forrest Tucker got 10 grand and he's getting a case of booze in his dressing room. I said, so he's not here free. They flew him in and they're treating him well. So, of course, saying that on the air, I got in trouble. And so the management came over and I had a big fight with them. So I nailed my shoes to the door of the management. And I said, fill these, you a-hole. And that was the end of that event. Bad move, because that guy became the president of ABC. We're long time friends since then. But I've had my moments where I've acted out and done things that were not exactly kosher and exactly fun. After Buffalo, I went from Buffalo to Cleveland to Detroit to Philadelphia. And when I was in Philly, they wanted me on WIBG, which was a very powerful station. And FIL hadn't come along yet with their great format that they bowled everybody over with. I did not go to WIBG at that time. I didn't like what they were doing, and I didn't take the job, although Tony thought I should be there. I thought not. So I went to, I think I went to Hartford. Yeah, I went to Hartford after that. And in Hartford, I took the Sherry record because I was friends with Bob Crew, who produced the Four Seasons. They were a background group, and he was out of money, and he used them to do a track for him. And one of the guys had written Sherry. It was Bobby Gaudio. And when that I was there at the session. I was at the Taft Hotel in New York, and I was friends with Bob. And I said, "Hey, this is pretty good. I like this." So he sent me home with the acetate, which is something it's not mastered yet. It wasn't released. It's not pressed. It's only the acetate. Sure. And I had two. I had one of them, and another guy came the next day, my friend, who was the first rap artist, and he gave me his copy. So I took the two turntables, and I played them back to back to where I wore the acetates out, which was about 4 hours. And the police came, because I didn't say anything in between. I just played the records like they were stuck, Yeah. And I got into a little bit of trouble with the police. Then they closed me down. and the record became a hit. Sherry became a hit. So that's how it happened.
Yeah.
And I had a good career with all this crap, you know.
Oh, trust me.
I don't know if you know this or not, but the only reason that I was able to sit down and play that record for 4 hours and not have the transmitter shut down is the program director was Morton Downey Jr. And
Okay.
he was more outrageous than I was. You know, we both got in trouble. But I've had quite a career with trying to get everybody's attention. And, you know, part of it is like what Trump does now, which is to put yourself out there and say all these outrageous things, and then people will put you on the you know, it's show business. They wonder what you're going to do. They want to know.
Exactly. Yeah.
They want to know when you're going to get fired. When are they going to pull the plug?
Yeah, but you know something, in your case, you were a lot different than the others. In fact, because first of all, you're very intelligent. You ask the right questions. You don't take any bull. That is obvious that you don't do that. It's one of the reasons why I followed you, and one of the reasons why I read your books is because it's really shooting from the hip and telling people what like it is. And I think that's one of the reasons why when you were a radio disc jockey and then later on a talk show host, that people follow you, and they continue to follow you. They continue to do that. Now, you've had a lot of guests on too as well, and you've had some good ones and you had some bad ones.
Let me share that with you because you brought it up, and
Sure.
I'm talking a lot here. Now,
That's okay.
I don't usually. I mean, my show is not 4 hours of talk. You can't do that. No one can do that. There's nobody that interesting in the world that I could think of. So I followed the Johnny Carson routine, actually. He was a pretty good role model for me. He would do his stuff, get it out of the way in the first 10 minutes of the show, or 15. You know, he did his monologues. Sometimes they failed and they were funny. But I'll tell you what he did. Afterwards, he would sit down and he made the show about the people who were on the show. And they would talk to each other and him. All he had to do was to set it up. So when I went to WOR in New York and I had 5 hours to begin with, nobody's going to talk for 5 hours, and I wasn't going to answer phones, and I'm not playing records. So what am I going to do? So Myra Channon, who is from Philly, she was my producer for years. Myra had set up every day a bunch of people who were very interesting. We had a cocktail party without booze. And what we did was we put enough people who were interesting together who would never ordinarily talk to each other, maybe. Yeah. Some would. And they were interested in finding each other and discovering each other. And it became a big hit show. I was there 15 years.
That's right.
And I only went there to sit in for a week. And I stayed 15 years. I never stayed that long. And I had another part of my life, which was in Hollywood, but we can talk about that if you want. But, you know, I did the marketing for Star Wars. And I also had the first satellite show, which was Satellite Live in 1977 from Hollywood every Sunday. I did that once a week. Sure. And it was the first satellite show because the guys who invented it hired me. That's why. And I did the simulcast in Denver on KOA every night. It was owned by NBC, General Electric. And I did a live radio and television combination on KOA radio and TV. So I've done a lot of different things. And I stayed interested, and I'm still interested. I like what's happening right now. Not this moment, I mean, not with what I'm doing, but what I'm talking about. I like the energy of young people. Try to convince the management people of the Friars Club in New York. I said, you know, we're making a big mistake. We need a farm team. There is no farm team. There isn't a sport in the world that doesn't have a farm team. And we don't have one. There's no farm team for television or radio. They all become newsmen or weathermen or sports guys. Yeah. None of them, and the comics don't have a place to go. They do stand up or die. And I said, you know, we need to build a field of dreams, as it were. Let's put a television facility inside the Friars Club, and people who want to work it out can come in and they can do their thing until they get good at it, and let them be on the air and let them be paid. See, like America's Got Talent doesn't pay anybody. They pay I mean, maybe there's a union thing of a couple $100, but it's really, that show is really about it's more about the host of the show. It's more about the panel than it is the talent. And I never saw the value, incidentally, I know this is a little controversial, but this is me. I never saw the value of someone from Toledo, Ohio singing a Stevie Wonder song when he's still with us. Why don't they just get Stevie Wonder and have him sing? What do we do? Why do we have some guy sitting there like he's in the shower? You know, I mean, I just never got the concept. To me, it was just a way to celebrate the 3 or 4 hosts and pay them a lot of money and exploit everybody else. That's how I looked at it. So I never liked that show. And I think it's one of the reasons Howard quit that show too, probably. It's it wasn't going to go anywhere. It's just about that. It's a dead end. Anyway, I'm not on the air just to make fun of the show. I just want to give my little bit of my philosophy so that you understand that there has to be a voice somewhere. And I'm not talking about the name of the TV show. There has to be somebody that has the voice of reason. And you know what? You can't be experienced if you're not old. Nobody is experienced if they're not old. How are you going to be experienced? You haven't done anything.
Yeah, well, see, but that's the reason. That's the reason why we love you, Joey. Is that basically you tell it as it is. I mean, if you don't like something, you say it. If you don't like something, you don't say it. By the way, that WOR show, the one that was syndicated, I was actually in there. I was one of the guys that you interviewed 16, 17 years ago, and I had a book out, and I was doing some stuff as well. And
who was on with you?
I think it was a gospel singer was in there. What do you call it? The Italian Chicks was also the other group that was with there. It was a whole bunch of us. But
see, this is people who don't go together.
That's right.
That was the fun of it. And you notice in the middle of the night where people are half asleep anyway. you know, one of the things right now is we don't have anybody that makes us laugh. And even the Pope said it last week, but I was surprised that he said it. He was sitting in a wheelchair and he had all these comics there. I said, he's the guy that wants to do stand-up. He wants to get out of that damn chair. But, you know, we had all of these people who were on the air back then, and they discovered each other, but the audience discovered all of us. And they were maybe half asleep, maybe working all night, but it was a big hit because I think I babysat old people. And old people they get up to pee, they stay up, maybe go to bed too early, and then they get up in the middle of the night and there's nothing there. So what I learned to do, and you can thank Philadelphia for this one, I learned from everybody else. That's how you learn, you know. You don't. I am not that smart. So I learned that if you tape something like you're doing here, and you tape it just a little bit ahead, so it's the same, so it's still relevant and it's on time. I taped the celebrity names, you know, the names that everybody was familiar with, at 10 o'clock at night, and I would play that at 3 in the morning. Because at 3 in the morning, you're not going to find all of these exciting people. You're not going to find the president of the United States at 3 in the morning on the radio unless he's, you know, walking in his sleep. But I had everybody on that show, and I pre-taped the 2 hours. Years later, I learned to do that, and then I had a really good audience because people would hear me going to work, and they weren't listening to me. They're listening to what you're doing. People are interested in other people. Social is only gossip. Social network, it's not even a network. Social is things that people get on the line and talk about that they heard somewhere else, because most people are not innovators. Most are not original, although everybody has an opinion and a belly button, as we used to say. There's 350 million people here. You think there's a few belly buttons? So, you know, when people get up in the morning at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 in the morning, and they turn the radio on, in those days we did do that. They don't do it now. But when you did that religiously, you know, now it's there, but it's not like it was a religion before. So you turn the thing on and you would be surprised. There was something interesting. So that's my point, is that I don't think we have short attention span. I think we have lack of interest. If you like a ball game, if you like well, let's say the Panthers right now in Florida, All right, now, if you like a team, you're going to stay with that for 3-4 hours. You'll pay a lot of money to go see them in person, maybe. But on the air, radio, television, internet, you're gonna pay a lot to get the subscription if you need to get it. You're interested, so you're going to stay with it. But
Sure.
we think the advertisers and the broadcasters think we have short attention span. We don't have short attention span. We have a lack of interest in what you're putting on the air. You're not putting anything there that I want to hear. That's why. I mean, if you keep me interested, I'll stay forever.
I'll tell you one thing. You keep my audience interested. For those of you just joined us, we are talking with radio personality, showman, basically. He's done everything. He's the icon in radio, Joey Reynolds, and we'll be back with Live on Tape right after this. Each year, 5,000 people, including children, choke to death. LifeVac can stop these senseless tragedies. And it's so easy to use as well. Simply place the mask over the face and push and pull. You'll never regret having a LifeVac in your home or office. Please visit their website at www.lifevac.net today to protect you and your loved ones. Or you can call them at 877-LIFEVAC. That's 877-LifeVac. And welcome back to Live on Tape with Pete Trabucco, WWDB AM 860 Talk Radio, a Beasley Media Group station, Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. And we've got an amazing guest. But before we talk about the guest, I've got to tell you about World Star Public Relations, where excellence meets exposure. Now, are you ready to elevate your brand in new heights? Well, their team of dynamic PR experts is here to make your story shine bright on the global stage. Whether you're a startup, an established artist or a business, or a rising star, they specialize in crafting narratives and captivating audiences for you. You can't go wrong with World Star Public Relations. Just an amazing group of people. I've been working with them for many, many years. And if you really want to get to that next level, try World Star Public Relations. You can reach them at 631-506-6600. That's 631-506-6600. And call him today. We've got an amazing guest. We've got a radio icon. He started it all. I mean, he's a mentor to me. I've loved him for years. He's been on many radio stations, including the Philadelphia stations, syndicated shows on WOR and a bunch of other places. But we are so glad to have, of course, an amazing, amazing guest here today. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our guest. Hello, sir. How are you today?
Well, nobody does anything alone. So what's the name of that company?
Joey Reynolds is the guy, but the name of the company, Beasley Media, is we're part of the group of radio stations across the country.
So is this the charity work, or do we have to pay for it?
Listen, I'll tell you right now, I'd pay you money to do this show for me because you're just an amazing guy.
No. I mean, I want to make my career better, so I'm going to call these guys.
Your career? There isn't anything you haven't done, Joey. Seriously.
I got it all wrong. No, Joan Rivers, I worked with Joan Rivers, and I'm going to drop a name for a minute because she was fun.
Sure.
And Joan had a show that was on the radio on WOR. She wanted to do radio, and she had 2 writers, and she paid them a lot. Because Joan made a lot of money, and she was a big star, and I always liked her because she was funny, and she also was real nice. She was down to earth. She was very sweet. So what she did was she had a show that was on before mine, and she would take the jokes because she had writers. I didn't have any writers. And she threw them in the wastepaper basket when she was doing her show, and then went home. And she had a producer and a dog, and Joan had a lot of facelifts. And one day I came in, and her producer was in the control room with bandages on her face, and one of the writers had bandages on his face, and she was just getting over one of her lifts. And I said to Joan, I said, "Bring me the dog. I want to see if you lifted the dog." So she always laughed. She says, "Oh, you're crazy." She said, she said, "Stay off of stand-up." And I said, "Yeah, well, I don't do stand-up. I don't have any material." So now here's the sequel to the story. So I had a friend who worked in Neiman Marcus, the department store. And I said, that's like Strawbridge and Clothier, New York style. So I went to the woman that I worked with, and she always chose some nice clothes for me and gave me a nice price, all that business. But Joan was a real beautiful dresser. She had a lot of money, and then she eventually started her own company with clothing. But she had the same woman at the store who would look out for things for her. So what I didn't know was Joan came to me one day and she said, "Joey, are you using my jokes?" And I said, "Yeah." She says, "Well, how's that?" I said, "Well, they're in the waste paper basket when you have all these right." I said, "How did you find out about it?" Because I was doing it at 3 o'clock in the morning or 2. She said, "Well, our friend over at Neiman Marcus listens to you, and she's my friend also, and she heard you using my material. She says, I'm not going to leave anything in the garbage anymore. I can't do this with you."
Yeah.
So I was pretty funny for a couple of weeks until I got caught.
Well, listen, Joan Rivers paid a lot of money for those jokes, and she only did them once. So,
believe me, she reminded me of that. Don't even go there. Unless Trump said something yesterday, he said that she would vote for him, and I said, she died 2 years before the election. What are you talking about? So we're also full of crap. See, the trouble is that we don't tell the truth easily because we don't think anybody really is going to do a fact check. And Google is not a fact checker. Now, let me tell you something. I want to share this with the audience.
Sure.
And I hope that when we listen to the radio and when we watch television or when we read even, or when we go on a subscription channel or even podcasts, I hope we leave knowing something that we didn't know, learning something, because we're all on a training film. Now, that's my philosophical side, and me included. I have a wonderful, wonderful sobriety for 42 years now that I've been sober. Now, before I did all these drugs, and I don't mind talking about it, and I'm not going to make a show out of it, but when I did these drugs, they were fashionable because we had all the rock and roll acts doing them too.
Sure.
I was playing records by Foreigner and Journey and David Bowie, and we all were taking a toke or something. And then the Beatles, of course, didn't help any with their mystical, magical tour. However, I think the spiritual side was stunning. The Beatles gave us all there is love, and then, of course, imagination with John Lennon and George Harrison, with his guitar weeping. And these things were awe-inspiring. And I don't think they came from drugs from the Maharishi. I think they came from their great talent, but they became uninhibited, maybe, and maybe the right combination. I don't know what. It seemed that we had a spirituality back then, and I'd like to see that again. I don't know. You can't create it. It has to happen. It's not something that you go out and buy. But I love the idea that we were so inspired. I was inspired, and it wasn't by a new pair of sneakers. I was inspired by the way that we were treating each other and talking about each other, and how we had this great companionship that we all had. We're so separated now. It's scary. It's scary that most people say whatever they want, whenever they want, do whatever they want, and there's no real regard for the thing that you would never do in a family, or you would get slapped. My father. I'll tell you what I used to get afraid of is when my mother said, "Wait till your father gets home." That was the fear of the Lord.
I remember that myself, by the way. You have done so much. I tell you, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you got into that. Yeah, you've done the syndicated shows. You did that. You did television. You did that. You stole Joan Rivers' jokes. You did that too as well. Okay. But I'm looking here. I read a book. You wrote a book that I really loved. And I want to tell the folks about it. And you've written several books, but the one I've written that I really, really, really would recommend, I recommend them all. But this one, Let a Smile Be Your Umbrella, but Don't Let or Get a Mouthful of Rain. You wrote that. And I tell you, it's pretty much your history, your background, what you did, what you're doing and stuff. Inspirational book. Tell me about that. Tell me about the books you wrote, because you wrote more than one.
Well, I've surrounded myself by attraction with wonderful people, whether it's Les Paul or Sid Bernstein, who brought the Beatles here. Best of friends, best of friends. Wayne Dyer, I did my show a couple of years, a couple of times a year from Maui. I was friends with people who were excellent. And many of them have passed because of age, obviously. And I'm at that age now. So we have a different kind of a relationship when we are surrounded by people who are awe. They're in awe. I'm in awe of them. Not that I sat around and kissed their butts all day, but because I paid attention to what they were trying to get across, what was underneath the message. And, even Marshall McLuhan is a Canadian. He wrote a book years ago called The Medium is the Message. And he was trying to inform us that we were powerful and we had a responsibility, but we weren't paying attention to that. I was too young. I wasn't experienced enough to absorb that yet. But I did, the music did touch me. The music, not by him, music touched me. And when I was working at 20th Century Fox, I was creative director. I did the marketing for Star Wars,
Yeah.
And I wasn't on the air for a number of years. I was a marketing director, and I also went to become the president of Wayne Newton's company. He was the #1 star in Vegas at the time. That was my next job, and I did the first satellite show. None of these were on the air. The satellite show was, but I got behind the other people, and so I had an appreciation for other talents because I had to make them shine instead of making myself shine. So the self-centeredness sometimes gets in the way if you are an artist. If you're all about yourself and everything points to ego and me, then it bores people. But if you're giving a hand to someone else, I was on with Oprah and I met Stedman, her boyfriend at the time. Sure. And Stedman, I had him on the air too. And he said something to me. I said, what are we going to do about the black stuff in this country? I said, we got to push. He says, Joey, you don't push. Push does not work. You have to pull up. You pull people up. You don't push them. He says, and that's what works. And he was teaching college down in North Carolina, I think, at the time. But you listen to people, and they're wise, and they say things to you between the lines if you want to hear it. If you have good ears, what is it? Ears to hear and eyes to see. Then you're probably going to have an easier ride with allowing everybody to be themselves, because this is a personality contest being on this planet. Now, let me say this. I want to bring this up. In Star Wars, when I get into any issues about the differences of people, whether it's their color, their religion, their size, their sexuality, whatever, that doesn't matter. Whatever is the difference, I remind myself of the Cantina bar scene in the first Star Wars.
That's right.
Where there was a guy who had a horn sticking out of his stomach and another guy who had 3 eyes. And everybody was different, but they all sat there and had a cocktail. But so everybody can get along, like Rodney King says, why can't we all get along? Yeah. The great mantra back then, we had a race riot in LA in South Central, and the police were very active, and they were jumping out of the sewer. And Chief Davis was a chief at the time. He was wishing them good luck because they were hiding under the gunfire. And he said, "May the force be with you." I thought, wait a minute, I thought George wrote that.
Well, they kind of stole that from from the garbage can of Joan Rivers, probably.
No.
So the bottom line is this: you've done so many things. You've worked the Hollywood scene. You've also done all that stuff. The way you are right now, and I know you haven't done, you don't do as much radio as you used to. I know there was a show not too long ago. Now you've got stuff going on right now as well. Tell us about what you're doing right now. I know you're healing. I know that's a big deal right now, and thank God you're doing well. But what's on the schedule? We got a couple minutes left. So what's on the schedule for Joey Reynolds? What do you still want to do? What's still there?
Well, I'm trying to be the Roger Corman of television. I want to do things low budget because of our society. I want to match up the social network crowd along with the commercial television and radio crowd. People who actually do watch and pay attention to radio and TV, and those who are free on the internet don't get together. And I think there's a place. So I have developed two different shows that I'm working on now, and I'm putting them together just as we speak.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and one of them is a well, they're both very inexpensive. See, the social networking is not about money. The commercial broadcasting is about money, and you can't play enough commercials to please these guys. David Muir, who does the late news on television on ABC, or early news at 6:30. When he's on the air, he always opens with it's a breaking story. Well, how many breaking stories are we going to have? Everything's not a breaking story, but it's showbiz. And he should do that show in a hospital gown because they're all pharmaceutical commercials.
That's right.
And the commercials that are on the television on that show, they don't have to have results because they're all corporate medications, pharmaceuticals. But if you put a commercial on WWDB from a local merchant, somebody better stop in the store because you gotta get customers.
That's right.
But on that kind of a platform, where we just have the inventory of time and we play this game of giving a news headline and then playing a commercial about a pharmaceutical, I'm criticizing it because I think it's the wrong direction. I think it doesn't involve people. I think it scares everybody. And we're a fear-based nation right now. I didn't grow up in a fear-based nation. I grew up, the opposite of fear is faith. I grew up in faith. I had the faith that I was going to be somebody when I did the right thing, and I was not going to get hit by my father if I didn't. And I was going to go ahead and I was going to be brave and I was going to be outspoken about what I believe because I didn't want to be poor. And I worked my way out of it. And that's what you do. And you have to have somebody that tells you that because somebody told me that. Yeah. I didn't know that. I learned it. And when I learned it, boy, I ran with it like one of the Philly, like the Eagles. I'm really very, very proud to have been part of Philadelphia. I'm telling you, it is the greatest, and I'm not just brown nosing. It's a great city. I have had my one daughter was born at Lankenau. I lived at City Line Avenue for a while. I lived in Norristown. I lived in Bluebell. I love Philly, and Philly is regular people. And I had a nun, sister, her brother was Terry Cashman, who produced Jim sometimes. Oh, geez, I got too many thoughts in my mind. I know you got to go.
Right.
So anyway, I'm trying to say too much. That's the disease.
Well, listen. I'll tell you. Yeah,
thank you for having me.
Well, you still got it, man. You still got it, and you'll always got it. Now, listen. Last section, we got about 3-4 minutes left. People are coming up. They want to be broadcasters. They want to be like you. They want to be a radio announcer. They want to be a disc jockey. They want to do television. They want to do all that stuff. It's tough. Give them advice right now. Give a couple minutes advice on what they do to get to your level, because very few people will ever get to your level. What advice you have for them?
Be bold. And that doesn't mean mean, and it doesn't mean evil, and it doesn't mean be deceitful. Just be bold. Just believe in yourself and know that you have that, and you can do whatever you want to do in a country that's free. You can do it until you get caught in this country. So don't get caught. Just do something that's proper, and you won't have to worry about being caught. Just go ahead with what you know. Everybody has a gift. Everyone has something. We're all very, very special and individual. Isn't it amazing? I've been in New York for all those years, and not any one of us, of the millions of people, we didn't shoot each other. But now there's a lot of crime, and it seems like it's new. It's not new. It's always been selective, but it's reported quickly.
Yeah.
I would suggest that if you want to be in the entertainment side of the radio, the television, or whatever it becomes, whatever the medium is, whatever the platform, it's just be yourself, have some fun, be honest, and also use your talent. I mean, some people don't belong. They belong singing. Go make a record. I will go on Spotify. I mean, that's the only place you're going to go these days. Nobody wants you the way we used to want you because the structure is different. The system's changed like the weather has changed, and it ain't going back. Don't look back. You have to look ahead. You can't. If you look back, you're going to be living by an old standard, and it's not here anymore. It's like when someone dies. I went to a funeral recently, and I said, I'm missing seeing my friend because I've been here recovering in Florida. And the person said, well, she's not here anyway. Her body is, but she's not here anyway. So I said, well, that's kind of cold. And I like the respect that we had. And I'm just a respectful person. But, we're living differently now. We live differently, and you have to go. You have to. This is the way it is, and you got to go ahead with it. So it's not an opinion, because I leave that to the Supreme Court. And I always said the only Supreme that I believe in besides God is Diana Ross. I mean, there's no way that I want you to take anything that I've said on this show and do what I said.
Oh,
Just
come on.
don't.
No, we're going to definitely listen to you because you're Joey Reynolds, man. I mean, they broke the mold after they made you. Joey, thank you so much for being on the radio with us. We do appreciate it. We're going to have you back on again for those 2 projects you're working on. We'll talk more about that next time. But on behalf of myself and Josh, we do appreciate it. Thank you for listening. And we'll
Goodbye,
talk to you
Josh.
again. Bye now. And we'll talk to you again on Live on Tape next week. Have a great day, everyone.